Taped from New Jersey, it's the SNL Nerds, the show where two comics from New Jersey nerd out about Saturday Night Live. I'm your co-host, Darren Patterson.
And I'm your co-host, John Trumbull.
John Trumbull, how are you, sir?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing, Darren?
I'm all right. I wish it could be under better circumstances because this episode is a bit of a special episode because we lost one of the great last week. The untimely, unexpected passing of Norm Macdonald.
He passed away on Tuesday, and everybody found out that he'd been fighting cancer for 9 years, which was just not generally known. So it was a real shock.
Yeah. It was like almost felt like a Chadwick Boseman situation because like it was the same thing. Like when Chadwick passed away, it was a total shockaroo to everybody because it was like, oh, I didn't even know he was sick. This came out of nowhere. Yeah, it's a big old bag of bummers, but we're here to celebrate the memory and the life of Norm Macdonald with our thoughts about him and his work on SNL, and of course we're going to talk about his starring role in the movie Dirty Work. But to help us with that, we have some guests here in the studio with us.
We've got our super producer Frank Hablawi, who graciously agreed to join us. Hi, Frank.
Hi. I actually really just insisted. Under threat of me editing this terribly, and I would be like, I'm just going to ruin it. So let me talk about Dirty Work.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
He strong-armed his way into this.
Mm-hmm. Happy to have you. And we also have our friend, comic Ken Krantz, who has been a previous guest on the show. Welcome, Ken.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us. Wish it could be under better circumstances, but yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. Let's get into it. So, Norm, he was on the show SNL from 93 to 1998. Just left behind like a whole legacy. I don't know. Where should we get into with this? Should we talk about like maybe our favorite bits he's done? What he's meant to us?
I think we can talk about our favorite Norm bits or favorite Norm moments or sketches. I think it's really impressive. Like when Lorne revamped the show in '95. Norm was one of the people that he kept. Like he was one of the few carryovers from the old cast to that largely new cast with Will Ferrell and everybody.
Yeah, that's right. He was a carryover because I guess Lorne saw the magic in him, and it's one of those things like where I do love Norm and I think he's a great writer. Oh, by the way, we should also mention like he actually when he got accepted to be on SNL. He was actually a writer on Roseanne, and he quit that to join SNL. And his sense of humor, it's definitely not for everybody, but like the people that love it really love it because like he was like one of those guys where, like especially on Weekend Update, where he would like tell these great jokes, but they seem to be sort of comics joke because like a lot of people just kind of stared at him and was just like, I don't quite get what he's doing here. But like the people that really loved his stuff, really loved it.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say he's an acquired taste. Like, Frank, Ken, how did you guys discover Norm Macdonald? What led to your love of the guy?
For me, it was Weekend Update. That was I'm so much of like a joke guy that I don't even remember. Like when I think of SNL, I don't think about all the great sketches. I always think about the great Weekend Update jokes. And for me, Norm was easily the best that ever did it. And I think it was just because of how little he cared what people thought of the jokes.
Yeah. The audience's reaction just seemed beside the point to him. He just wanted to get the jokes out there. Frank, what about you?
So what Darren said about him being an acquired taste, it was exactly my taste. He's one of those comics that every comic has like delivery, their own particular pacing and the way they frame a joke and what have you. But it was super apparent with Norm Macdonald. The way he told a joke that was almost as if it was for him. And you just got to laugh almost at him delivering it and the awkward reaction it would sometimes garner from the audience. So Weekend Update was a perfect example for it because you could hear like the rows that laughed and the rows that just awkwardly, oh God, another OJ joke. And So it's just absolutely amazing. As far as sketches were concerned, I can think of one he was in. Burt Reynolds. That's the only thing I could think of.
He was in a fair amount of sketches, but he never made any bones about the fact that he didn't particularly care about sketches. He just cared about Update.
Yeah.
I hadn't realized like how hard and how long he hit the OJ thing. I watched a video on YouTube this week of just OJ jokes from Weekend Update, and it was 35 minutes. And it probably wasn't all the jokes that he did.
Yeah.
So that's like 2 full Weekend Update segments worth of jokes about OJ, and they all just boil down to the same thing of like, yeah, he's a murderer.
he went hard after OJ. I mean, we'll get into that later about like him and Don Ohlmeyer and all that jazz. But yeah, like as far as his jokes, like that really kind of hooked it in for me. There's one joke he did on Weekend Update I still think about. I don't know why it tickles me so, but it really does. It's like he talks about like the top 100 songs on the Billboard, and he said at number 1, it's better than Ezra. Number 2, Ezra.
Yeah. I saw, like the band Better Than Ezra actually noted that on their Twitter account this week. Just like they were good sports about that.
Yeah, I mean that's like almost a dad joke, but I don't know, like something about the way he delivers it still, like to this day, still makes me chuckle.
Just exactly like somebody who is good at telling dad jokes, dad jokes. Right? Yeah. It's right on it. It's funny, but I don't want to laugh at this.
But he had like some really genuinely clever jokes too. It wasn't all just dad jokes or humor.
You were good at it. He was good at it, and and I think that's why so many comics loved him more than like his general appeal. I guess his general appeal was arguable, but comics, all of them seemed to love him. Ken, were you saying something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to add they were dad jokes that just took very undad-like twists and turns. They were like dad punchlines with some of the longest, most bizarre setups you've ever heard. And then when you find out it's just a dad joke punchline, and it's like you fall for it every time. Like no matter how many times, like the moth joke or the turtle joke, like no matter how many times he does the same thing, I still fell for it every time.
And like something I kind of admire about him as a comic, like, well, one, like that commitment to do jokes that aren't for everybody. I mean, just like, I guess playing to the back row. I think that's pretty exceptional. And I also love that he would never really back down. He would never back down. He would never apologize. I remember on Weekend Update, he was making a joke about Michael Jackson, because this was when the whole Michael Jackson abused kids story was first breaking. And he made some joke, and I don't even remember what the joke about Michael Jackson was. And the audience sort of like, I think half laughed, half groaned. And he just went, "What? He's a homosexual pedophile, right?" So he wasn't not even backing off. He was doubling down on it. And just like, you're not going to laugh at this? Okay, well, screw you. I'm going to go harder. And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, he was one of those guys that just kind of always went for it. Like another thing I think of when I think of him behind the Weekend Update, I always think like that running gag he had where sometimes he would tell the joke and the punchline would be Frank Stallone.
Yeah, Frank Stallone.
Yeah, it was like something where he would just bring up the name Frank Stallone, and he would take like a really long pause, like longer than he should, and the audience would kind of half get it and kind of not half get it. But like it was like one of those jokes that was just for him. And then like, on another episode when he was doing his jokes, he would be like, "You guessed it, Frank Stallone."
Yeah.
It's like, why do you keep mentioning Frank Stallone? What is this?
That was one of his go-to punchlines. He also loved Germans loved David Hasselhoff, and he'd always put up the same photo every time. So his Weekend Update got funnier the more you watched it, I think, because he had so many recurring bets and callbacks.
A lot of it was an odd subgenre of cringe humor. Like you would watch him, and the fact that he didn't tell a joke that was like funny, flat out, it wasn't like it wasn't obviously funny, but would just stare at the camera. And you would start to laugh because it was so awkward. And actually, a lot of this, I'm not going to get ahead of the game, but this whole movie, Dirty Work, a lot of it was the joke was on the movie itself. The fact you're sitting there watching this ridiculous film with this ridiculous premise and this almost cartoony level of violence. And it was very like awkward, but he was reveling in the fact that it made you awkward because these were just jokes. Why were you taking it seriously? He'd probably hate the fact that we were talking about him like this.
Yeah, he did play everything with like a sense of irony. He did have some sketches on SNL that I really liked. I mean, his Bob Dole impression I thought was really strong because that was really in his wheelhouse. He played like Bob Dole is kind of half crazy, just like, I'm Bob Dole. And I think like a standout there was when they had Bob Dole on The Real World. And so it was Bob Dole with just a bunch of MTV 20-somethings.
Oh, yeah, I remember. I forgot all about that. Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, and they'd even do like all the conventions of The Real World. I think at one point you see like Bob Dole overhearing a conversation about him, and they start playing REM's Everybody Hurts, and you just see one single tear go down his cheek.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, like, I mean, I know he was best known for his impression of Bob Dole and his impression of Burt Reynolds. Like, those were the things that, like, kind of, he was most well known for. But he also has some really other good impressions that I kind of wish he did more of during his stint on SNL. Like, if I still to this day think of the sketch where he did an impression of David Letterman. That late show.
I think he only did that once.
It was so good and so spot on. I'm saying this as somebody who was like a diehard David Letterman fan back in the day, and I would just watch it all the time. And like his impression of Letterman was like so spot on. He was kind of playing it straight, but like that, I guess that was the joke, that it was like a really good Letterman impression. I really wish he did it more. I wish he did that, and his Quentin Tarantino impression was really good too. He only did that one time.
I don't remember his Quentin Tarantino impression, but I can see him doing a nice job with that.
Yeah, it's like a pre-tape where he plays like they do like a behind the making of Pulp Fiction or something like that, and like he's doing a Tarantino impression, and it's pretty solid. Like, guys, if you can find it on the interwebs, I highly recommend you check it out.
I'm gonna have to look that one up. Like, I think probably my all-time favorite sketch that he did of sketches that he did on the show was when they did like the sort of West Side Story parody when Robert Downey Jr. was hosting, and he's in like this 1950s style street gang, and everybody's like breaking into song, but Norm is like the one guy who's like, why are you breaking into song? Why are you having these choreographed dances? And the line that always cracks me up, he's like, hey, I got a song. It's called When You Were Singing and Dancing, I Got Stabbed to Death by a Puerto Rican. and at the end, when like the rumble starts breaking out, like he's like, guys, come in, back me up. And the guys come in and they're doing like high kicks and stuff. And he's like, oh, this doesn't look good for me.
Oh, no.
It's basically just Norm Macdonald stuck in West Side Story, and hilarity ensues. That's probably my favorite of his sketches.
That was a good one. I also liked his Larry King impression.
Oh, yeah. Oh, his Larry King was great.
Yeah, his Larry King was great. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I should have looked up the lines, but like it was like a thing where he would like say a line straight into the camera. That would be like kind of a weird non sequitur. Yeah, he would just like look into another camera and say another weird non sequitur.
Because it was like Larry King's newspaper column. I think it was in USA Today or something, where it was just like random sentences of just odd thoughts that Larry King had.
Yeah.
And nothing to do with anything. It was just so
it would be. It was shit like if you ask me, nothing beats soup and grilled cheese.
Right. it was that level of inane.
Like, you got a column in a major newspaper that it would be like 10 things like that.
Well, that was basically his interview style too. He'd just say whatever went into his head. I was watching a clip of Norm the other night where there was somebody who had lost a child, and Larry King goes, Paul Newman says you never get over the death of a child. And Norm was talking about like, that's the only way you can relate to this person. You can show empathy is you relate a story that Paul Newman said.
Yeah, the salad dressing guy. He's good.
Yeah.
He's got some pearls of wisdom.
Maybe I don't know if we'll ever cover it on your show, but the Norm Macdonald has a show, talk show that was on Netflix for a couple of years, a few years back. He loved poking holes at the interview styles on these programs, and his Twitter account was full of this too, like watching TV and commenting on old Hollywood or the weird kind of artifice we have in front of everything when we talk to celebrities. So I think that's why his impressions of Letterman and talk show hosts are always so on point, because he got the inanity right. He got the stupidity of what we're doing really down packed. I really do think he was like a fan of TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. He enjoyed sort of seeing like the way, TV shows and stuff are structured, and just kind of just breaking it down at their, just making fun of the ridiculousness of it. Like I remember he also made fun of when he did the roast, the Comedy Central roast, and like he came up into the roast. He was kind of making fun of roast because
the Bob Saget roast, where he was almost actually doing dad jokes with.
No, he got the jokes from a book of jokes to tell at like retirement parties. It was like what I read was that it was like a 1950s roast joke book. And he just went up and delivered he just read those jokes.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah, and it definitely sounded like it. And if you watch the audience in the Bob Saget roast reacting, it slowly dawns on them that they're the subject of the joke, right? The first few jokes kind of don't land, and people are like, chittering, and they're like, oh, Norm isn't on his A game. And by the third joke, they're like, oh, this is definitely intentional.
It takes doing this 2 minutes for people to like catch on with what he's doing.
Yeah.
And then they're loving it. Everybody's like totally on board. And all the comics in particular are really loving it.
Yeah. I remember watching that. It took me a minute. It was like, what's he doing? And then it's like, oh, he's making fun of this whole thing. Oh, I get okay.
Yeah.
It took me a minute.
And it really stands out because he's doing like 1,000 greatest jokes type of thing. I mean, it's really on that level. And on the Comedy Central roast in particular, everybody goes really blue. So,
yeah.
I mean, he told a punchline where it was like, the punchline was like literally, this man is for the birds, after he named a bunch of birds. It's just like, it was so bad you had to laugh.
He had speaking of that talk show he had on Netflix, I was just watching the one where he interviewed Michael Keaton. And at the end he'd written out a bunch of jokes, because Michael Keaton used to be a stand-up, and he'd written out a bunch of jokes for Michael Keaton to read. And one of them, I mean, it's fun, like Michael Keaton read it, but I heard it in Norm's voice, which made me laugh so hard, and I can't stop thinking about it. Was I wonder who's buried in the grave of the guy that invented the old switcheroo.
I read that somewhere this week. That's a great joke.
And I could not stop laughing. That joke is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's pretty. I never heard that one. That's a damn good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a show definitely worth checking out on Netflix.
Yeah.
I'll have to. I hadn't watched any of that show before. I mean, I like Norm Macdonald. He was just somebody I sort of sporadically followed. Even on Twitter, because like sometimes you'd get killer jokes, sometimes you just get
baseball.
Yeah, he'd go way hard on whatever sports event he was betting on. But I think the joke that he was doing there was, I might be wrong, but I heard somebody breaking it down, that he would start the events, like he would DVR them and start them late. Oh, really?
And then tweet everything out like it was in real time. I don't even know if that's true. I just saw somebody say, but if that's true, that's hilarious. So even if you're watching the game and you're keeping up with Norm's tweets, they're all half an hour behind.
If he did that went completely over my head, since I'm not a sports person.
So much of what he did is joke deconstruction, but you feel like a douche calling it that. Mm-hmm. And he would not probably accept that either. But it really is. I mean, the For the Birds joke, the old switcheroo, who talks like that?
Yeah.
Only he does in this like approximation of old time Hollywood, and it's great.
Yeah, and I think one of the most insightful things I saw was like, the guy who would have a killer joke about Norm Macdonald dying would be Norm Macdonald, and like there was a clip of him on the Daily Show. This was when Jon Stewart was hosting, and he had jokes about the crocodile hunter dying literally 10 days after he had unexpectedly died.
Yeah,
and Jon Stewart at one point is just like, "Don't make me laugh at this," but he's cracking up as he's saying it.
I just want to back up for 1 second. If you're the crocodile hunter, can you unexpectedly die? Were we not prepared for that every day of our lives?
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's like a NASCAR race. Those cars are going to crash soon.
Right.
Yeah.
That's half the reason you're watching. You want to see that that guy take a chomp.
And it's the framing of the joke. It's what did he say? He said like, no, it was sad at first. It was something really mean. Like it was just, this was very tragic at first when you first heard about it. I'm like, then you're suggesting that it's no longer tragic. And there you go. Yeah, it's so good. Such good stuff.
Yeah. There was like before we get into the movie, there was a thing that Sean O'Neill posted on Twitter, and it was an excerpt from Norm Macdonald's book, and he said, like, when I reviewed it, I wrote that these 2.5 pages would make for a fine eulogy, and if you guys are cool with it, I could read that. I have it up here.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So this is Norm writing in his book. I'm forgetting what was the name of his book. I don't have it up with me. Does anybody know offhand?
I got it. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Is it the one based on real events or something?
Yeah, that was it. So this is called The Final Chapter. He says, and I'm not going to try and do a Norm voice, but maybe some of his voice will still come through. He says, there's the way things are, and then the way things appear, and it is the way things appear, even when false, that is often the truest. If I am remembered, it will always be by the 4 years I spent at Saturday Night Live, and maybe even more than that by the events surrounding my departure from that show. As long as SNL exists, then so do I. When people come to see me do stand-up, it is because somewhere in their memory I live on SNL, dressed as a young Burt Reynolds, insisting Alec Trebek refer to me as Turd Ferguson. And then they come to see me, and I'm old and fat, and I don't mention SNL, and I do my answering machine joke, and they are happily disappointed. After the show, they stand beside me and take pictures the way you would with a donkey at the side of the road. They tell me they are big fans and they don't care what their girlfriends say. They understood me even though they know good and well that nobody else does. I'm dry, they say. The next time I come into their town, they don't show up. Wow. It can be difficult to define yourself by something that happened so long ago and is gone forever. It's like a fellow at the end of the bar telling no one in particular about the silver medal he won in high school track, the one he still wears around his neck. The only thing an old man can tell a young man is that it goes fast, real fast, and if you're not careful, it's too late. Of course, the young man will never understand this truth. But looking back now, I can see that my life since SNL has been a full sprint, trying with all my might to outrun the wolves of irrelevancy snapping at my heels. It has all been in vain, of course. They caught and devoured me years ago, but not completely. Lauren would see to that. My foot would still make a vague imprint. Myself would still cast a faint shadow. And years later, I would write a book. And not only write it, but be in it as well. I think a lot of people feel sorry for you if you were on SNL and you emerged from the show anything less than a superstar. They assume you must be better, but it is impossible for me to be better. I've been lucky. If I had to sum up my whole life, I guess those are the words I would choose, all right. When I was a boy, I was sure I'd never make it past Moose Creek, Ontario, Canada. But I've been all over this world, except for Europe, Asia, Australia, Africa, and South America. Oh, and Antarctica. That's a tough sentence to say. But that's really splitting hairs. I mean, how many people have ever been to Antarctica? I never expected to be any more than a common laborer, and I would have considered myself lucky to have achieved that. But I was blessed with so much more. I'm a stand-up comedian and have been for over a quarter of a century. I performed thousands of hours from a small club in Ottawa, Ontario, all the way to a small club in Edmonton, Alberta. Sometimes I get big laughs and think I'm the best stand-up in the whole world, and other times I bomb, and I think I'm not even in the top 5. Before I was famous, I had a whole bunch of jobs where all I needed was boots. People would look right past me, or if they did look at me, it was with a mean look. But when I got famous, people would look at me and smile and wonder where they knew me from. If they flat out recognized me, they'd laugh and dance like they'd won a prize, and I'd just stand there and smile and feel warmth from their love. So the fame made the world, which is a real cold place, a little less cold. And as for my gambling, it's true. I've lost it all a few times, but that's because I always took the long shot and it never came in. But I still have some time before I cross that river. And if you're at the table and you're rolling them bones, then there's no money in playing it safe. You have to take all your chips and put them on double six and watch as every eye goes to you and then to those red dice doing their wild dance in freezing time before finding the cruel green felt. I've been lucky.
Wow.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that really struck me when I read that. And, I'd never read his book before. So that was my first time reading it. But that was something else, I thought.
Well, I just bought the book and I just downloaded it and I just opened up the first page and the dedication. It says to Charles Manson, and then in parentheses, not that one.
Oh.
That's terrific.
Oh my God.
That was an amazing eulogy.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's something because I'm assuming that was written sometime in the last 9 years. So yeah, I'm sure that it was written after his diagnosis, and makes it awful. But
when you think of all the appearances and specials and interviews he did while sick, knowing that he was sick, and still so dark, so many cancer jokes.
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. Yeah, he really kept his he really kept it quiet. It's really pretty shocking. So let's go from that to talking about Dirty Work.
Yeah,
Dirty Work. This was a movie he did in 1998.
Yes, came out June 12th. Had a budget of $13 million, only made 10. So it's a bit of a bombaroo.
It was he did this it was released I think less than 6 months after he left SNL or was fired from SNL because he clashed with Don Ohlmeyer about all his OJ jokes.
Right, because I believe Don Ohlmeyer said he didn't get his humor, he didn't think he was funny, and plus I think Don said he was golfing buddies with OJ, so he didn't like all the OJ jokes.
Yeah, they were tight.
You know what's super interesting about that to me, just real quick, is you think that Lorne is the end all be all of Saturday Night Live, and it was like a reminder, nope, Lorne is a boss.
Yeah. Lorne has a boss. Lorne has people he has to answer to too. Yeah. And and apparently Ohlmeyer bore such a grudge that he didn't let this movie be advertised on NBC.
I heard that.
Eventually he was overruled on that, but they still wouldn't advertise it on SNL. So that kind of, I'm sure, contributed to its lackluster performance.
Yeah, I mean, there was a few other things too that I guess led to it. I guess for a while they were trying to make sort of Norm like a leading man, sort of a bankable person, but that never really kind of took off, unfortunately. It's just because he's like we said, he's an acquired taste. But yeah, so this film, Dirty Work, written by Norm and two SNL writers, Fred Wolf and Frank Sebastiano, and directed by Bob Saget. Danny Tanner.
Yeah. And it was Bob Saget's first film, and they were buddies going back, I believe, from the stand-up world.
Yeah, because people kind of know Bob Saget as Mr. Full House and America's Funniest Videos, but don't forget, Bob Saget has a filthy sense of humor.
He is a dirty, dirty comic. I mean, Google Bob Saget aristocrats, and that'll explode any perceptions you have of Danny Tanner or the America's Funniest Home Videos guy.
Right. And and so this movie was, I didn't know this until now, but this is based on a short story by Roald Dahl called Vengeance is Mine Incorporated.
That can't be real. Is that true?
I didn't see anything in the credits about it, but it's on the trivia pages on Wikipedia and the IMDb. And I read up on the short story, and other than like two guys starting a revenge business, it doesn't sound like it has much of anything in common. So I'm just like, why did you bother buying the rights to that story if you were going to make it that different?
Yeah, I mean, Wikipedia wouldn't lie to me. They're saying it's there.
Wikipedia is always correct. I mean, if I've learned one thing doing this podcast, it's Wikipedia is never, ever, ever wrong. But yeah, it's Vengeance is Mine Incorporated. And it was previously adapted in a 1980 episode of Tales of the Unexpected.
Okay, interesting.
Maybe we should screen that too and just compare the two.
This is going to be a Roald Dahl deep dive for the rest of this episode.
Yeah, no, we're just going to change the podcast over into a Roald Dahl podcast.
Yes. Just as a little bit of a transition, one of the things I loved about this movie, I saw this in college. I think we were like theater hopping, and I watched a bunch of movies in a row, and this stood out because we thought it was hilarious. It was infinitely quotable. We loved the hell out of this movie, but about the short story it's kind of based on, it's sort of genius because the movie, and I just resaw it last night, is a bunch of vignettes tied together, right?
It's just a bunch of like a lot of short sketches, pretty much. A
lot of short, ultra weird, violent, maybe gross sketches tied together very loosely. And but the concept of it being like a revenge for hire business is sort of genius because you could cobble together a movie from a bunch of different jobs you have. And I love like vignette movies. I love like Amazon Women on the Moon and Kentucky Fried Movie. Like these are these great these kind of movies they don't really make that much anymore, which are just a bunch of sketches that are loosely tied together. And this is a genius idea. It helped make the movie flow perfectly. And you could just throw in, they could have made it 10 minutes longer or cut another 20 minutes out of it and it would have worked. Well, maybe not cut 20 minutes out. It was pretty short as is.
Yeah.
Now, Frank, one thing I'm curious about. You said you were movie hopping from theater to theater. What other movies did you see that day?
I'm trying desperately. I'm thinking. I think, and I could ask my old a friend of mine who probably remembers, but I think Godzilla may have been one of them.
Sure,
the American Godzilla movie. And I can't think of anything else. I'm gonna look to see what was in theaters at that time, and I'll come back and answer that.
Yeah, I know it was released opposite Godzilla, so yeah, that sounds plausible.
And like from what I looked up, it also came out the same weekend as Can't Hardly Wait and 6 Days, 7 Nights with Harrison Ford.
Oh wow! So
those two probably were not on the list.
You weren't ready for that big Harrison Ford and Heish romantic comedy? Not quite.
It has to grow on you.
But yeah, that's another question. That's a question I was going to ask at the top of this. Did anybody else see this movie in the theaters when it came out? Ken, John?
I did not. This was my first time watching the movie. I remember the ads for it and seeing the ads, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not watching that.
I didn't see it in the theater. I've seen it in bits and pieces 100 times over the years. But the other day was the first time I sat down and watched it beginning to end.
Oh, all right.
What about you, Darren?
Same thing. I didn't see it in the theaters, but I did watch it on a video out of curiosity because a few of my friends were like, "Oh no, the ads don't do it justice." And I watched it and I was like, "Oh, this is really this is really something." It was good. Yeah, I remember enjoying it.
Yeah,
and I still enjoyed it when I rewatched it.
We left the theater quoting this movie to each other, and it may have been a bigger group of people. I can't remember the details anymore. Can't remember my friends anymore, but I can remember the movie pretty well.
And that's as it should be, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were just so many weird Easter eggs. Seeing Chevy Chase show up in this movie was ridiculous. Don Rickles, less ridiculous, but ridiculous. And then there were the people who were late 90s icons of the role they played in this movie. What's her name? Trailer Howard as the girlfriend.
Yeah, she was
McDonald as the
yes.
asshole.
Yeah.
Wait, who was the? I don't know who that is. The actress that played the girlfriend.
Traylor Howard. She's probably best known. She was like the second assistant on Monk after they wrote the first one out.
I never saw that.
Yeah.
Wasn't she also in
it's on H&I in the afternoon, so you can catch up on Monk pretty quickly. Yeah. Which I know
she was also
in.
Yeah, I mean, Traylor Howard, she was like that. She has very like girl next door looks, and she was in like a lot of stuff in the late '90s. She was in Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place.
Yeah. She's in that Jim Carrey movie.
Me, Myself, and Irene, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one where he has multiple personalities. Yeah.
But like, it's always this sort of role that she's playing, like one of those, I guess, character actor who just does a great job of this one role. Even Pops was in Problem Child as Pops, effectively. Like,
Jack Warden, yeah.
Yeah, and Jack Warden. I'm kind of like
12 Angry Men.
you aged into a certain role, and then you got it for a while.
How many times do you think he screamed that at his agent during the filming of Birdie? I was in 12 Angry Men.
At least once a week. At least once a week. Yeah, I remember he was on. Wasn't he on Crazy Like a Fox? Does anybody remember that show from the 80s?
Oh
no!
It was like a father and son private detective thing, and that's literally all I remember about it.
Oh, that's a deep cut. No,
yeah.
That.
It was one of those million detective shows that ran on CBS, like Simon and Simon.
Wow. Yeah, but I mean, this movie had like a huge cast, a lot of cameos, but it underperformed. And I remember like one of the reasons that might be it underperformed is because it was originally written as a rated R movie, but the network made them change it to a PG-13. Actually, the studio, right? I'm sorry, the studio made them change it to a PG-13.
Man, NBC has long reach.
John Oliver's like, no, you're making that a PG-13.
Yeah,
do not screw with OJ's blood.
And they were like, you don't even work here, Don Olmeyer.
That would have made the movie would have been so much better R-rated.
Oh, yeah.
When you slap PG-13 on comedy, it just always takes the teeth out of it.
And the first thing in the goof section on the IMDb page for this movie, it says, audio-visual unsynchronized. When Mitch and Sam leave jail and Mitch addresses his cellmates, his lips can clearly be seen to say, anal rape. But this is overdubbed with the words, the other thing. So
I'm not sure if that's true. I don't. It may be. I gotta look at it. So I'm gonna make one argument as the person who watched this in theaters that I have no problems with R-rated comedy, obviously, but like the reason why I love this as PG-13. I saw this last night with my mother-in-law and my wife, and I was like, "Is this gonna be a movie that I'm gonna be like rolling my eyes this entire time?" And it worked. Obviously, there's nothing really racy in this, but there's something super cheap and funny about seeing the setups, but not actually seeing the horrible thing that's supposed to be happening in the background.
Yeah, there was one sequence in particular where you just see Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang, his sidekick, just reacting to these horrible things that are going off screen.
People literally narrating, though, is that a grenade? Is that a fire?
Yeah.
There's something like cheap about it. As a person, like we do indie comedy here. We don't have the huge budgets to film something ridiculous. Seeing it goofy and played off camera was really funny. And to talk about how Norm Macdonald kind of had like anti-comedy, where like the punchline was the joke, just the fact that he was saying it. The entire prison sequence that could have been a lot more raunchy and a lot more like R-rated, but the fact that he was offended, mildly offended, ridiculous. That was probably the only really funny prison rape joke I have ever heard.
Yeah, I do agree with you that they figured out a good way around it, and I'm sure it was just budgetary, but it that normally wouldn't work with most movies, but it does with this, and it gives it a charm. Yeah, like you see Norm pulling his pants up, and he's like, "I've got half a mind to tell the warden."
Got a lot of growing up to do.
A lot of growing up to do.
Disappointed.
Yes, he was like a little disappointed in their behavior.
He's not really traumatized. He's not angry. He's just a little put out.
Yeah. And there's something they were like, exactly, Ken. They worked with what the parameters they had, and it made it funny. So that's what I really appreciated.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, this movie was going to be an R-rated movie, but according to IMDb, here's a little trivia about it. So, Artie Lang, at Jersey's own Artie Lang, was wary of working with Chevy Chase after having heard many stories from friends and colleagues about Chase's nastiness. But in his book,
I've never heard those.
I've heard a few things. One or two.
Interesting. Okay.
But in his book, Too Fat to Fish, Lang recounted that he loved working with Chase and they became good friends. Lang also recounted that Chase warned him that MGM would force them to make the film PG-13 rated for release, even though it was written and filmed as an R-rated film, and told him to fight that move. Lang, Norm Macdonald, and the rest of the cast and crew did fight for the R, but the studio ultimately refused because they said that there was not a large audience for R-rated comedies at that point, as Lang sadly noted in his book, Dirty Work. In his book, Dirty Work was ultimately moved to an earlier release date, in part to stay clear of There's Something About Mary, which was not only an R-rated movie, but became one of 1998's biggest blockbusters and revived the entire R-rated comedy genre for years to come. This came out a month before There's Something About Mary, and then after
great
that,
call, studio.
Yep,
great call.
Really got your finger on the pulse.
Chevy Chase knew what he was talking about too, because you look at that first National Lampoon's Vacation, R-rated, and then they made European Vacation PG-13,
right?
And look at the difference between the comedy in those two movies. It's night and day.
Yeah, very true.
That's very true. Okay, so let's talk about the movie. We didn't get into the premise. So it's in the movie, if you haven't seen it, it's basically Norm plays this guy Mitch, who's a bit of a loser. He's a bit of a slacker. He hops from job to job. His girlfriend, during his day,
we see him get fired from a pizza delivery job towards the beginning.
Right, exactly. And they have this ongoing thing I love where it just shows him getting thrown out of places. Like
so great, so cartoony. I love it.
Yeah. You do see him fly out of, and like you said, it is literally like a cartoon. They have I'm assuming a stuntman just fly out horizontally out the door and lands on the pavement. And and they do it multiple times, so it gets funnier and funnier.
Out plate glass windows, and every time he immediately just stands up and walks away because there's of course no consequences to this because otherwise it wouldn't be as
cut on him. Not a bruise, nothing.
Right, and Mitch has a best friend Sam, played by Jersey's own Artie Lang, and they also say Mitch never knew his dad, so Sam's father, Pops, played by Jack Ward, sort of became his father figure in that respect. And so, Mitch and Sam have known each other all their lives. And as they get older and in their 30s, they're kind of still aimlessly without jobs and looking for some, something to do.
His brother says he's been fired from 14 jobs in 3 months, I think, which is that's honestly kind of impressive.
Really, I'm not even mad. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
His girlfriend throws his clothes out while Semi-Charmed Life plays in the background.
Is there a more 90s song than Semi-Charmed Life?
I was instantly transported.
I just heard the do. And I'm back in 1998.
Right. And so it's basically that. It's like the two of them just trying to get their lives together and trying to figure out what to do. And but throughout his whole life, Mitch has always been good at getting revenge on people, playing pranks and getting back at people who have wronged him.
We see them as kids, and they get revenge on their bully, like a crossing guard who would grab kids' asses. And,
that was a really funny scene, actually.
Yeah, and you see Norm's character as a kid, he puts crazy glue on his ass so that they can catch the guy in the act. So they have a talent for creative revenge.
Right. So then they're sort of it's Mitch and Sam at a bar talking to each other, trying to pick up a girl. They get into a bar fight. They also we should also mention this too. We have Chris Farley as Jimmy, Chris Farley's final role, because he passed away. This was his last role. He passed away like 6 months before this film came out.
Yeah, he's not included in the credits though. He's uncredited in the movie, but yeah, he died about 6 months before the picture was released.
Right,
but he's in it a fair amount.
He's in it a fair amount, and he has. It's almost kind of disturbing what he has, but like the tip of his nose got bit off by a Saigon woman of ill repute, and like just to see that, it's like that's it's
really dark. That disturbed you because the makeup job. I think they spent about $5. I mean, it's not really like the tip of his nose is off. It's like they built up around the end of his nose to make the end of his nose look flat. I don't know.
Yeah, kind of like a volcano or something.
This movie not the most convincing makeup job.
This movie has the most whores per minute used, and it's not just whores, it's whore, prostitute, and hooker. Those three words with as much an old inflection as possible. It's ridiculous. It's almost sex positive how often they're used. And like they're like, even Norm makes a point of saying that you're going to be paid for this, but there will be no sex. And it's just it's such a weird way of speaking, and this whole movie is full of that, and I love it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. He throws that word out a lot, Norm. I think they write in. He really has a thing for women of the evening.
The hard H, I think it is. I think it's the way the word sounds when you say it.
I think so.
Yeah. But Darren, you mentioned like they get into a bar fight early in the movie, and we see Mitch and Sam taking revenge on these fraternity guys later. Like they call them up and they say like, "Hey, there are these two guys going around as fake cops. So if they come by your fraternity house, beat them up because they're fake cops." And then, of course, they send some real cops to the fraternity house, and then they beat up the cops, and then we just cut to them all getting savagely beaten by the police. And I did find it a little tough to buy that, like, Norm Macdonald's able to pull off a prank phone call, because, like, how do you get a phone call from Norm Macdonald and not recognize his voice?
They lean into it. They lean into it in such a great way.
Yeah.
When he calls and he talks to the frat people, he's Norm Macdonald doing the Norm Macdonald voice. Yeah. And they just supply him with all the information he needs. And he's like, and he gets off the phone. When he calls the real cops, he actually goes, "Real cops?"
Yeah.
He refers to them as real cops. And I'm like, this is a movie that just doesn't really care that much.
No, that's true.
Bringing these coincidences together and giving you ridiculous scenes, and I'm here for it.
But so we see that they had this flair for revenge. Then Sam's dad, Jack Warden, has a heart attack. And they take him to the hospital. When he's in the hospital, he confesses that he is actually Mitch's father as well. And he's like, "I can prove it. Here's a picture of me having sex with your mother."
Yeah,
and you don't see the
locket. He took it out of a locket.
Yes,
he had a picture of himself having sex with his mom in a locket.
Yeah,
it's close to his heart.
Do. Yeah, because that's an evening you want to remember. But
think of the confidence.
Yeah,
a picture of yourself.
But Pops, that's what they call him in the movie. He makes Mitch promise not to tell Sam that he's actually his father and therefore Sam's brother. And we meet Chevy Chase as Dr. Farthing, who says your dad needs a heart transplant, and there's nothing we can do because he's not famous or a big sports star. But I can move him up the list if you give me $50,000, because we find out that Dr. Farthing is a big gambler and he's in debt to like loan sharks. So, but he's like, if you give me $50,000 so I can pay off these loan sharks, then I can move your dad up to the top of the transplant list.
Right. So that's our premise, which I believe isn't that the same premise as another SNL related movie, Hot Rod with Andy Samberg.
They were trying to do something health related in that. I don't remember what exactly it was right now, but yeah.
I think it was the same thing because in Hot Rod, Andy Samberg's stepfather needed like money for a surgery, and I think it was the same amount, $50,000.
I think it's like, if we're going to spend a whole movie having these people doing heinous things to other people, we need them to be doing it for a good reason so that we feel that they're still good people.
Absolutely.
I think that's the rationale.
Also the same plot as Spider-Man 2. So just think about it.
Wow.
Or
Sure.
three, sorry.
Where Spider-Man started a revenge business.
Close.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, makes sense. So the guy. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, no. So the guys are looking for ways to get the money. They get a construction job, and then they get immediately fired because they lied and they don't know anything about construction.
Right.
They take part in some clinical tests, eating some test brownies.
Right.
And then they, the doctors say, hey, there might be some side effects. You might, sweating, and you might hallucinate a bit. So of course it's them driving home. And Sam is fine, but Mitch is like covered in hives. He's sweating. He starts to hallucinate that he's in hell. He's driving in the car with Gary Coleman as he's reading the paper, and he sees Adam Sandler as Satan.
Yes. So this movie possibly inspired Little Nicky, where Sandler played the son of Satan. So
I will say this: Fred Wolf, who wrote this film, did write Little Nicky.
Oh God.
Okay.
I'm just putting it out there.
That's awful.
If I had to guess, I'd say it's Gary Coleman's final film role too.
I wonder. That was the first time I remember being shocked by seeing Gary Coleman in the theater, because I was like, I have not seen him, I think, since Different Strokes was on the air.
I mean, he wasn't really working in the industry by this point in his life, I think. So, yeah.
Don't you think it's? I know this off topic, but do you remember that movie Unbreakable?
Sure.
Don't you think Webster was like the Unbreakable version? You know how they were like the polar opposites, Bruce Willis and the other one? Yes. Like, because Gary Coleman was so bitter and angry and hated being Arnold, and Webster just leaned into it, and everybody loves him, and he kept his money.
Yeah.
Gary Coleman died. I just always thought they were like unbreakable.
I just checked. This actually was not Gary Coleman's last role. He didn't die until 2010.
That doesn't really preclude this being his last role, but you're right.
He has a number of credits after this, though. He's actually in Dickie Roberts' former child star.
Oh.
Have
you done Dickie Roberts yet on this podcast?
We have not. I mean, we're saving it.
Oh, of course, you got to save that.
I mean, that's an anniversary show if there ever was.
Of course.
So as we go on, the guys get jobs at a movie theater, and this is probably one of my favorite scenes in the film. The movie theater is run by this dude named Hamilton, played by the late great Don Rickles.
Lin-Manuel
I got that.
And it's a big day for the Mr. Hamilton, the movie theater manager, because he's like, the guys from corporate are coming to inspect the theater, so we had to make sure everything goes just right. And then because it's Don Rickles, he spends a lot of time insulting his employees.
I mean, from what I've read on the IMDb, they were actually considering Rodney Dangerfield for this role, but they went with Rickles because he's more known for being an insult comic.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. And as soon as Mr. Hamilton leaves, the other employees go, "Oh well, he's awful. I wish there was a way we could take revenge on him. We would even pay somebody to take revenge on him for us." And Mitch and Sam go, "Hey," and so they decide to sabotage him by substituting the movie, taking away the movie Men in Black and substituting the movie Men in Black Who Like to Have Sex with Each Other.
I'd argue that's another one where the PG-13 paid off, because whatever they were going to put on the screen was not going to be funny if it was R. But just the hacky voiceover, great.
Yeah,
And
Right.
I love how so much of this is like a Norm Macdonald joke. The premise is just ridiculous, and it's like, oh, someone from corporate is coming. This is
Yeah.
a big day for me. No explanation what that means. It doesn't
No.
matter. It's
Yeah.
someone from corporate. 30 minutes or less pizza delivery gets him fired. No explanation for why.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's just all these like little. This is probably the most like reviewing an episode of SNL because each one of these little bits can be done separately and
Yes.
independent of the story of the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
You could edit out most any random scene in this movie, and it wouldn't affect the movie too much.
Not a bit.
Plot-wise.
Yeah.
I mean, I will admit that I really like the Don Rickles scene where he was like berating Sam and Mitch, because I think at one point he calls Sam a baby gorilla, and at one point he says Baskin Robbins called. They're down to 5 flavors.
But he bent down and set it into Artie Lang's belly.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, how can you not love Don Rickles? Honestly.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I think like Artie Lang even said in interviews like, yeah, like during that scene, like it was really hard for me and Norm not to break and laugh, because like there's even like a few scenes where like Norm was literally genuinely laughing because he just couldn't keep it together.
I know Rickles hosted SNL like back in the 80s at some point. We should go back and watch that episode sometime. I watched his monologue from it, and it's spectacular because, how could it not be? But so after this goes so successfully and Hamilton gets fired and they get paid by all the movie theater employees, they decide
including Kevin Farley.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin Farley has like a bit part in there. So they decide to officially start this revenge for hire business, and around this point we get Trailer Howard into the mix too. Like Norm meets her at a bar right before the bar fight earlier, and she seems inexplicably attracted to him. She's just like, "Hey, I like the cut of your jib, Norm Macdonald. I'm going to be throwing myself at you for no real reason other than I'm in a movie with you.
I'm the girl. Therefore,
that was the role. That was the role.
I don't have a last name or any particular character traits. But I am required to be romantically or physically attracted to you. So that's what we're doing.
Right.
And
I looked it up. Like you mentioned the Don Rickles episode of SNL. I think we should watch it because like I'm looking at it now and it's Don Rickles back in '84, musical guest Billy Idol.
well, I mean, how can you not love that combo?
That might be worth a watch.
Yeah. What did those two talk about during the week? I just record that. I'd be entertained by that.
White weddings, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. But Kathy runs Trailer Howard's character. She runs into Mitch in the street, and he finds out that she's an accountant at a car dealership. We have David Koechner as her abusive boss. And he's gearing up for a live commercial for his dealership. Again, I don't think live commercials for car dealerships are a thing. I worked in a car dealership. I never heard talk of a live commercial. I don't see what advantage that brings to your car dealership to have a commercial be live. But Mitch and Sam decide, hey, if we disrupt this live commercial, that'll be a great advertisement for our new revenge business because we have to earn this $50,000 inside of 2 weeks.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Then that's another one of my favorite scenes where they gather a bunch of women of the night to play a little prank on Mr. Dealership, car dealership.
I've never seen so many dead prostitutes.
Yeah. Mitch steps up in the middle of the live commercial and he's like, hey, that it doesn't look like there's much trunk room. And so David Koechner opens the trunk and there's a woman playing dead in there. And Norm Macdonald's like, I've never seen so many dead prostitutes. And each time they're opening the trunk or closing the trunk to hide the dead prostitute, Sam is hitting the key fob to open the trunk again. So, everywhere you look, there's a dead prostitute.
Oh God!
Hey, your autobiography.
Yeah, and they give out the number for the revenge business called Dirty Work, of course. And they're like, "Hey, is somebody making your life miserable? Then get revenge and call Dirty Work. And here's the number 555 whatever."
Yeah.
And Kathy gets fired from the dealership. I didn't see that coming at all.
Yeah, repercussions. Who knew?
Yeah, no. Though we see them taking other jobs.
Well,
there. Go ahead.
What I was going to say, there's a job where a small person who works at the circus wants them to take revenge on this abusive bearded lady.
Mm-hmm. Played by Rebecca Romaine.
Yes.
Which I wonder how that happened. They're both friends with Conan O'Brien, maybe.
I don't know.
We have Rebecca Romaine as the bearded lady who's very abusive to the little person at the carnival, and they take revenge on her just by shaving off her beard. Or
like, oh, now she's just an attractive lady. Damn it.
Yeah, there's no possible way she can earn a living now.
That'll show you.
Spray paint over the word bearded on her trailer so it just says the lady.
Yes.
You're ruined.
And her life is ruined, because there's no way that a woman who looks like Rebecca Romaine can possibly earn a living in 1998.
So many ridiculous.
But also, why couldn't she grow another beard?
Literally. Just wait.
This movie's full of holes.
Oh my God. And it's weird the things that they struggle to explain and the things that they're like, no, we're never gonna back this up.
Doing this.
It's gotta be a live commercial, or otherwise why would they ever air it?
Right.
But everything else around it, no, who cares? Just do it.
No, that's so much Norm Macdonald's philosophy of comedy. It's like, don't explain it, just fucking do it. Don't care about the plausibility.
Logic gets in the way of a good time.
Yeah, they send logic out to the back room and then beat it to death.
Right. Exactly. And and then we get into another one of my favorite scenes where a man talks about how he lives next door to these people that are constantly making noise and being loud, and he wants them to stop. So Mitch and Sam break into the house and hide fish everywhere.
Yeah,
because the smell will be bad. But then the people come home, and turns out they're drug dealers.
They're drug dealers. They open a big suitcase full of cocaine, and they're like, "Oh, well, now we're going to sell this cocaine because we're drug dealers." And then one of the guys in the drug dealers like, "Hey, why does this house smell like fish?" And then it erupts into this huge argument, and they shoot each other to death. Frankie, you had something.
I'd like to step in and say Trumbull wasn't just like awkwardly explaining that. That's pretty much what they say. They're like, "Well, we're drug dealers, so let's deal these drugs here." Now it's what they're gonna do.
Yeah,
I actually read an interesting piece of trivia on this scene. The cocaine used in the scene was Artie's. They didn't have the budget for real cocaine. It was just from his own stash.
That was just what was in his trailer that
End of the day.
That's what he got paid to do the movie.
So that's why the budget was $13 million.
It all makes sense.
But I mean, this I think is one of the funniest, if not the funniest scene in the movie, because we just see Mitch and Sam hiding in the next room, and we hear the drug dealers basically just narrating their fight. And they're like, "Oh no, you're machine gunning me. Oh no, now this guy has a machete."
And just
now
like
you're killing me with a chainsaw. Literally saying you're killing me, but announcing it. So good.
Yeah.
And just like the look on their faces, because like at first they're really happy that they're pulling one over on these guys, but then as they realize, oh, we've just inadvertently committed like a big shootout.
We're accessories to murder.
Yeah, like the smile slowly fades from their face, and they're like, "Oh, this is a lot worse than we thought."
And then when everyone's dead, they like kind of sheepishly come out of the room. We see them like walking there. We don't see any gore. There's no gore. We see some bullet holes in the wall, but we hear like a squishing as they're on their footsteps. And then the neighbor comes in, he's like, hey, you guys did a really great job.
Yeah.
This is another thing where, like, I can't quite turn off the logic part of my brain, but I'm like, you have to get $50,000 in like 9 days or 6 days at this point of the movie. You know what you should do? You should take that cocaine and sell that cocaine.
Yeah.
That's a great way to earn some money
Yeah.
fast, I would imagine.
They spend money on renting an office and furnishing it.
You're like, how much money do you spend with all these revenge schemes? Shouldn't you save some of that for the $50,000?
It's insane because they explain where the money came from for renting the storefront.
Yeah.
From the $2,000 from a sister, but that was just to establish that there was a sister for a joke later on.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
That's all that was for. And they apparently raised but at this point in the movie, I think they said something like $400.
Yes.
You're at $400 days away from 50.
They have 6 days left, and they've earned a total of $400.
Yeah.
And they need $50,000.
Yeah. They're like, let's go buy a sign.
Yeah. Let's furnish this office.
You got to spend money to make money, guys.
I guess so.
That's our problem.
It's really impressive that they were able to set up this business inside of a week. But
Yeah.
Yeah, the permits alone, they would have been held up.
yeah, exactly. And by the way, we're periodically going back to the hospital for scenes with Pops, and we see Chevy Chase's character, the doctor, and like when we next see him, he has a broken arm because like the loan sharks are coming after him.
Right. They broke his arm because I think they threw him out of a speeding car. He said.
Yeah, that's what he says.
And I like how at one point they go back in to see Pops in the hospital, and now the doctor has his foot in a cast, and I think Sam said, what happened to your foot? And he's like, look, I don't understand. Like when a bookie blows one of your toes off, you still owe him the money? That doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
Incredulous.
Ridiculous. Good work for Chevy Chase, you know?
Do you know what he bet? That this little throwaway joke that after like 20 years, I finally heard it. Apparently, he was betting on the Jets, which is insulting enough, and Mr. T, which they actually take a moment to unpack.
Yeah. They're like, you bet against Rocky in Rocky 3.
You should have bet the first fight.
He lost in the first Rocky.
Yeah, it was a 50-50 chance. Yeah.
It's like, I take those odds.
Yeah. I mean, what are the odds? Oh, right. Yeah. So, we didn't even introduce the villain of this thing yet.
Well, the movie barely has at this point. So
that's true. All right. So, so the villain in this film is Travis Cole, who's like a real estate mogul, played by the great Christopher McDonald, no relation, I believe. Of course, we all know him as Shooter McGavin and Happy Gilmore. And like his thing is he's building this opera house because he loves opera, and he's like building this big opera house in town. He always carries like a small Chihuahua dog with him, like he's Dr. Evil or something.
Mm-hmm.
And and so he wants to make like a big parking lot for the opera house, and that means he has to bulldoze this little old lady's house. So the little old lady calls Mitch and Sam to see if they can help him, and and they do. So they end up putting popcorn in the engine of the bulldozer, which
is a thing that we see them do as kids at the beginning of the movie. They did that with a Meter Maid, so that's like one of their go-tos.
Right.
But it's funny to see like popcorn coming all out of every part of a bulldozer.
And like a ridiculous cartoon again.
Mm-hmm.
What gets them in trouble? The trail of kernels going back to their storefront.
Right. No, it's not the dead drug dealers. Where their fingerprints are literally all over that house.
No consequence at all for the mass murder that happened a little earlier.
No.
There are severe consequences.
Yeah.
And also they are caught by their own. Do you know how much popcorn they needed to bring back to the store? Or
look, it was only $49,000 worth of popcorn, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's like Capone getting arrested for tax fraud.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Not quite, but yes.
Kinda.
I also think it's funny that nobody suspected the new revenge business that had just opened up in town.
Hey, who could be behind this? Could it be the guys that hijacked a live commercial last week, advertising their revenge business?
That's too easy.
So we see Mitch and Sam get thrown into prison, into jail, and we find out that Sam has no idea of what supposedly happens in jail, and Mitch has to discreetly explain it to him.
Yeah,
he never actually does explain it to him, though. Oh no, he whispers it in his ear. Doesn't he?
Yeah,
he whispers, and then you see Sam, by the look on his face, doesn't even believe him.
It's he's incredulous. Like, no. It's the most acting I've ever seen Artie Lang do.
Yeah. He's like, no, how could that happen? No, there's no such thing as prison rape. No.
That's crazy. What are you talking? That's crazy talk.
And I like that this is a guy in his mid-30s, and somehow this has just totally escaped him. He's just never heard of this happening before.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's when we get the scene of, I guess, Norm being what's the word I'm looking for here?
Sexually assaulted.
Bingo.
Off screen.
Yeah.
Some big burly guys come by and they take Norm away, and it's left to our imagination what happened.
Right.
And you can't describe, if people are listening to this, haven't seen the movie, you can't describe this without it seeming like very off color or weird, or like, how is this funny? But it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
The reaction to it is so ridiculous that it really is. It's like, it was as if the challenge was trying to make a joke about this.
Yeah.
And Norm Macdonald was like,
this is a PG-13 movie, so they can't go too far with this stuff, obviously.
Right. I think the furthest they go is when they show like the dogs humping and like the skunk getting banging the chihuahua.
Yeah. But even that, very cartoonish.
Yeah. All right, so the guys get bailed out by Travis Cole because I think at this point Travis Cole realizes he kind of looks like the villain here, like, pushing a little old lady out of his home. So he, just for optics, he bailed them out and dropped the charges, gives us a little press conference, and then he gives Mitch and Sam an offer to get this building condemned that he says he owns. And so, because he wants all the people in it out, like all the criminals and prostitutes and drug dealers, all the vermin out of this building, so we can come back, rebuild it for the good, hardworking, blue-collar people.
Right. If he does that, then he can throw all the residents out legally because none of them want to leave. And Norm Macdonald says, well, we'll do it for $50,000 because, he's clever like that. So Sam and Mitch go there, and then they say they put flyers under everybody's door saying, hey, we're going to tent the building for termites. We're going to fumigate the place, so you need to be out on this day at this time. And then once everybody does, they plan to just trash the place.
Right, yeah. Cherry bombs in toilets. They smash down doors, put fish again in the walls because that's their signature move, I guess. And they spray paint the whole thing, and they just kind of ruin the whole building. And then that's when Mitch finds out that the girl he likes, Kathy, her grandmother lives in that building.
Right. And then he sees her grandmother entertaining a bunch of young ladies, and he's like, "Oh, these are the whores from the prostitution ring that she runs." He just immediately jumps to that assumption. He sees like some attractive women, and he's like, "Oh, obviously prostitutes."
His mind just goes right there.
Yeah. So after they trash it, they discover that the building is not owned by Travis Cole, the evil Christopher McDonald guy. It's actually owned by Kirkpatrick, who's their landlord.
What?
Who they rented their office from. Yeah. And
the villain told him it was his building.
I know I did not see this coming, that he would not be trustworthy. But yeah, Kathy's grandmother actually runs a sewing business, and all those women were actually sewing stuff.
And I love when they confront I was just McDonald, but I don't remember what his Travis. He's more than just the actor who plays a bad guy. But when they finally confront him, he like just he narrates his involvement in this. He's like, "Yo, I showed you a little bit about dirty work." Like names the movie, which is great. But what was the plan? Was it just to make them, damage a building? Because it's not his building. How does he benefit from this?
Because all the residents are evicted still, so he can buy the property and put up his opera house. He buys it
dirt cheap and puts the opera house there.
I see. So he buys it and he turns that into a parking lot because he lost the other parking lot. Okay, that part was missing for me, because when I'm watching this, I'm like, well, isn't it? They just screwed out their own landlord, the guy who likes to punch people in the stomach, which is just a weird throwaway gag, but is perfect. But yeah.
You missed literally the only thing they explained.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
He's so used to not hearing explanations at this point that the explanation just flew over his head.
Right. Even when you hear one, you don't hear it.
And I think also his other motive was he wanted to take revenge on these guys because they'd already gotten him with the popcorn bulldozer gag. So he was like, I'm going to show them.
Right. Yeah, no, that's so the people who are the destitute people who helped them break in to get to Travis, I've seen those three, or at least two of those three actors.
The three homeless men,
the three homeless men. I've seen them in a lot of SNL stuff.
Yeah, they're played by Fred Wolf and Jim Downey are two of the homeless men. And they're both SNL writers.
Right.
Okay, that's it. I always thought they have to be they have to be tied in SNL somehow, probably as writers, because I don't remember seeing them on screen a lot, but they're always in these movies and these little parts that are just funny and beaueful little parts. That's
Jim Downey. You probably know him from what's the Sandler movie where Billy Madison?
Yeah.
He's the guy who says, and this has become a meme where it's like, that is like the stupidest thing that has ever
dumber
been heard.
Having heard
Everyone's dumber for hearing it, and may God have mercy on your soul. And apparently, I read on his Wikipedia page earlier today that is like partially based on a thing that Downey would say when he was like rejecting jokes from like Chris Farley.
Nice.
That's funny.
Yeah. So yeah, Downey's like I think the longest tenured SNL writer. He's written for the show for like 30 years, and he's done a lot of their political stuff.
Nice.
Wow. Okay, so where are we in the plot?
Mitch and Sam found out that they've been double crossed by Travis.
Yeah, and they find out that the homeless men that they hired to help them in this scheme, they actually worked for Travis Cole,
right?
Our villain.
And then I believe at this point, Mitch tells Kathy about what he did, and she's mad at him. Also, the two of them go see Pops, and that's where Pops tells Sam that, Mitch is your brother. And Sam is mad at him because, he's like, oh, Pops was the only thing I had that you did, and now that you're like taking that away from me. So now we're at the low point of the movie where Mitch is very despondent.
Just to back up a minute, there was one bit where Mitch is apologizing to Kathy, and he says, like, I'm really, really sorry. And you totally hear Norm Macdonald's Canadian accent come out when he says sorry. He goes like, I'm really, really sorry, which that kind of amused me because he doesn't usually sound.
Yeah. You heard that? Yeah, you heard that too, right? I could have, I was like, did he say sorry?
Yeah, ooh. I'm just like, wow, how do you not dub that? Because he's playing an American dude. So
yeah.
One more thing they didn't explain.
I mean, this movie is just it's built on a house of lies.
Absolutely.
So we're at Sam. He's pissed about the Pops thing when he finds out that they're actually brothers, and this kind of goes into what Frank was saying before when they have an offhand mention of Sam's sister, and we find out that Mitch actually slept with Sam's sister at some point in 12th grade, I think they said.
Yeah.
And so he realizes like, oh, I actually slept with my biological half sister.
Whoopsie.
And yeah, they don't unpack that. They just just a throwaway gag.
Yeah, like you never see Sam's sister, but they just talk about her.
Yeah, she's just mentioned. But yeah, Mitch has nowhere to stay now because like his girlfriend threw him out at the beginning of the movie. Sam throws him out of their place after he finds out about the father thing. So Mitch is sleeping in his car, and throughout the movie, he's dictating notes to himself like Norm Macdonald used to do on Weekend Update, like note to self. And he realizes that he actually has Cole admitting that he lied on tape.
Right. Yeah, he got the whole explanation.
Right. And it's literally him saying, I lied about this. I actually own this. He's like laying it out in the most clear-cut way possible. You know, he's doing everything except saying like, I'm evil.
My name is Travis Cole, and I am an evil liar. I can be found at this address, my home address.
But so we're kind of gearing towards the climax. Mitch and Sam, they make up with each other. Mitch is creeped out because he realizes he slept with his half sister. And Travis Cole is doing this big opera opening at his opera house, doing a production of Don Giovanni, which, of course, you know, everybody's favorite opera. Ken, I'm assuming that's your favorite opera, right?
Yeah, as you know, I'm a big opera guy.
Right. Yeah.
And that's that or Black Swan.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm a big fan of Kill the Wabbit. That one that's Elmer Fudd. That was a good one.
I like Die Fledermaus because that's the opera that they were watching right before Bruce Wayne's parents got killed. So,
ooh, wow, that's deep.
Yeah, I'm highbrow like that.
So we also see Mitch and Sam going to the shelter where all the displaced tenants of the building were, and like Mitch comes clean. He apologizes to everybody, and he says like, "I'll make it right. I have this one big idea, this one big plan that'll get back at him and get your house back." And then that's when we have the big ending scene here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he says like, if this doesn't work, you can all slug me. So and that all sounds pretty good to the residents. So they're like, yeah, okay, we're behind this now.
Oh, I can beat you up. Done.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we see the guy sneaking into the opera house. They give the security guards those test brownies that they had in the clinical tests. And of course, all the security guards are all wigged out and like break out in a cold sweat, have rashes on their faces, and they hallucinate and they see Gary Coleman in a boxing match with Kenny Norton. So random.
So it all ties together, really. I mean,
I wonder who was easier to get to agree to do the movie, Kenny Norton or Gary Coleman.
I mean, the world may never know.
So we have Mitch bringing in all his friends to sabotage this opera performance. His prostitute pals, the homeless dudes, and all the evicted tenants. They dress up as ticket takers and ushers. Mitch gives one of the brownies, the tainted brownies, to the opera singer, and like everything's in place. And we get a cameo from someone, the mayor of the city, who opens up the show. We get John Goodman coming in out of nowhere.
Totally random John Goodman cameo, and it's just he just shot this in an afternoon. I guess Norm's buddies with him either from him hosting SNL so many times or when he was writing for Roseanne, or maybe both. I don't know.
Yeah, it was so weird because like this role doesn't really require somebody like him at all. Like you could have gotten anybody to do this.
That's true. There's nothing particularly John Goodman like about the role. It's just John Goodman there.
It was like just to say we had John Goodman in it.
Yeah, but he's not credited in the movie. So
no, I could be wrong. Was the Saigon hooker Lucy Liu?
No,
I don't think so. No, I think you're just really racist.
Then I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're just.
Yeah, I guess. All right.
No, that's okay. Just own it.
Looks like I'm not getting on SNL either.
Cancel.
Um,
Right. Step aside,
So-
Shane Gillis.
Yeah, so they even have Pops out of the hospital, and they have him taking over the role of Don Giovanni, and he's like coming on to the fat lady in the opera, which is what they call her. I don't think her character ever has a name. They just literally call her Fat Lady.
Yeah, it's like, and of course, Pop's like a, creepy old man. He's like, "Hey, come over here, sweetheart. I'll buy you a steak."
Yeah, he's super horny, and and the audience is horrified. Except there's one guy who's like, "Oh, this is a brilliant reinterpretation of Don Giovanni." He's just loving everything they do.
Right, and we also see Jimmy is with them. Chris Farley's character. He releases 2 skunks into the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because his reasoning was that because he was missing part of his nose, he can't smell as good. Didn't he say something like that? And that's why he was all right with the skunks?
He probably did, yeah. But it's like the tip of his nose. It shouldn't affect his sense of smell at all. But
yeah, he still has his nostrils.
Yeah, his nostrils totally intact. And again, I don't think something happening to your nostrils suddenly affects your sense of smell.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no nose doctor, but
no.
Yeah, so the opera is pretty much ruined. Everybody runs out screaming in horror at 2 skunks and a horny old man on stage.
Right.
And then we have Mitch confronting Travis, Cole saying that basically saying, "Look, if you don't give us the $50,000 you owe us, we're gonna release the tape because I recorded it all on this recorder." So Cole writes him a check for the 50 grand.
He signs a piece of paper giving ownership back to Kirkpatrick of the building that they sabotaged before.
Right, because he happened to have that on him.
Right.
And
he had all the relevant legal documents drawn up, as you do.
As you do. And then he turns to the doctor, Chevy Chase, Dr. Farthing, who happens to just be there in a tuxedo, and he gives him the check.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what is he doing here?
And they caution him, Dr. Farthing, like, look, you got to go straight to your bookie to pay this off. Don't go spend it. Don't go bet it elsewhere. And he's like, okay.
No, Chevy Chase is this great joke. He's like, how much you want to bet I blow this before giving it to my bookie? Which is such a great degenerate gambler joke.
That is. And I'm sure Norm was writing you from life from there. We have like sort of a last minute complication where Travis Cole destroys the tape, and we think, oh no, that there's all the evidence. Travis Cole is going to win after all. But then Mitch just says, "Hey, Kathy, she has a copy. She's going to play that right now." And then he's gone. It's a complication that lasts like literally 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's not like life or death.
Yeah, well, like he said they're going to play it over the PA right now.
Right.
And then he realizes that he's totally lost, but then they never even play it. You're waiting to hear it in the background.
Uh-huh.
And you don't even hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it said like they play the tape, but it's like note to self, sex with a blow-up doll isn't as good as advertised or something like that. Yeah. It's like, no, fast forward it.
Yeah, no, it's after that. So, all Cole's lies are exposed. He's arrested for fraud. All the residents, they get their building back. And, it works out for everybody.
Yeah, Jimmy gets a new nose. He gets married. He gets married to the woman that bit it off in the first place.
Sure.
Love springs eternal.
He's a forgiving sort. Yeah.
Yeah, but she bites it off screen. You hear him screaming from the car.
Right.
And he screams, "You bit my nose off again."
Well, that's probably the sequel hook there.
Yeah. I think I did read somewhere that, like, before he died, Norm was thinking about writing a sequel to this.
And he commented on it in like 2008. I have it here somewhere. Yeah, he When he was asked about a sequel in 2018, Macdonald stated it was an R-rated movie, so we made it that way, and then they made it PG-13. So half the movie had to be cut. So it's hard for me to see it objectively. There might be another one coming now, I guess. Macdonald did not elaborate further regarding the potential sequel. So
interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if it was ever a strong possibility, but hey, that's dirty work. I mean, what do we think of this overall? I mean, I was so on the movie overall, but it definitely has some amusing bits in it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought one of the amusing parts was the way it ends, because as we said, Pop gets his new heart. Apparently, he hooks up with Kathy's grandmother, and we end with Kathy and Mitch in a car driving away, saying, "Yeah, I got the girl. Me and Sam got new jobs." And that Dr. Farthing, he got beat to death by the bookies.
Yeah,
that's it. Bye.
He overcame his gambling habit, but they beat him to death anyway, and that's literally like the last line of the movie, the last bit of narration.
Like that's it. Bye. Bye.
Yeah, just one last dark note to end you with. Yeah, that was cute.
So I thought, like, for me, the magic of Norm Macdonald is small doses, which is why he was so perfect for Weekend Update.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I love dumb comedies, and this was definitely a dumb comedy. But I don't know how much I'd rewatch. Like, if it's on, maybe I'll catch it in bits and pieces. But
yeah, it's totally a movie you can just watch 5 minutes of, and it's entertaining in those 5 minutes. But you don't have to watch the whole thing, and it's such an episodic movie. It works perfectly like that.
Yeah. I mean, I thought the length was good. This is a nice short movie. It's barely an hour and a half. It's like 82 minutes. It's in and out. The jokes are quick and fast. It doesn't linger too long. It's one of these movies. It's like a fun little watch. Don't look to this movie for logic or for things to really make too much sense, because that, like I said, that gets in the way of a good time. And yeah, I think it still holds up. I think it's a nice little fun little time here.
Yeah.
This is my favorite Norm Macdonald story ever, and it's tied into this movie.
All right, go for it.
He already told this story on Howard, and already said that when the movie came out and the reviews came out, scathing reviews. And one of the reviews said that Artie Lang had all the charm of a date rapist.
That actually was in the Star Ledger, Artie Lang's hometown paper.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah, so it says that he had all the charm of a date rapist.
Right.
Artie Lang's mom is understandably upset with the hometown paper review of her son. So Norm and Artie were laughing about it. Artie told Norm, and they were cracking up about it. And then the night of the premiere, Artie brought his mom, and Norm pulled her aside and said, "Don't be upset, Mrs. Lang. Look at it this way. A date rapist has to be way more charming than a regular one. He's got to be able to get a date." Howard was crying laughing when he told that story, and so was I. Like, I think I had to pull over because I was laughing so hard.
That's great, because I mean, Norm, he put the thought into it.
Yeah,
it's a fair point. It's a fair point.
It's a very fair point, and I wonder if it probably didn't make her feel much better, but at least he tried, right?
Yeah, it's much more insulting to say you're a regular rapist.
Yeah.
A date rapist, he at least seems normal at first.
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean that's Norm Macdonald in a nutshell.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's our episode, guys. Yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, like, as closing thoughts on Norm or this movie as a whole, anybody want to wrap this up or put some thoughts?
I mean, I think it's an entertaining enough movie. If you're a fan of Norm Macdonald and or Artie Lang, I think you'll enjoy this movie. I would say it exceeded my expectations. Norm Macdonald, he's a tough guy to be a lead of a film, and it's a tough it's tough to have his humor translate all the time, because he can be a bit of an acquired taste. But I think this packaged him pretty well.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like, it seemed like for a while they were trying to make Norm, and like I said before, they're trying to make him to like a leading man, but they didn't know exactly what to do with him. Like I remember for a while he had his own show on Fox for a while with Laurie Metcalf, and he's had shows on Comedy Central, and he was just like a guy who was never going to be the leading man, just because
he had a lot of different quickly canceled shows.
Yes.
I never watched that Norm show, but a comic sent me a 1-minute clip, a scene from it. That was so funny, and I cannot believe that it aired on network television. I'll set it up quickly. I won't do it justice, but I guess in the show he is a gambling addict. He's like a recovering gambling addict or something. So the scene, and again, network television, and he walks into what he believes is a Gamblers Anonymous meeting.
Okay.
And he gets up to speak. He walks in mid-meeting, so he's missing the meeting, and he gets up and says, listen, I used to think I was better than you guys because I didn't think I really had a problem. And then he told some personal story of losing money that affected his family. And then he was like, now I realize that I'm just like you and I'm no better than you. And they all politely clap. And then the next guy gets up to talk about how much he loves having sex with children. And then they pan over to the sign and it's like Pedophiles Anonymous. And Norm realizes that he's in the wrong meeting. And is disgusted and just gets up and was like, well, I was way off base. Like I want you people to know I am better than you, and shame on all of you. I'll send you guys the clip, but I could not believe that was on network television.
Wow.
God damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm surprised that was on network TV. Holy hell!
I'm impressed that he got that on the air. That's something else. I mean, I think probably the best way to enjoy Norm Macdonald. I mean, you can watch some of his great clips from SNL, and there's, those are all over YouTube and stuff, particularly this last week. But I think probably his best form is as a stand-up and as a talk show guest. I think that those are some of his funniest moments there. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I watched the clip that's actually that Conan sort of re-released. That's been making around. The one with him and Courtney Thorne-Smith.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that, and I didn't watch Conan regularly. I just happened to be watching that night, flipping through the channels.
Yeah.
And I saw that, and my friends and I have been talking about that for 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Courtney Thorne-Smith, she talks about how she's just left Melrose Place and she's doing a movie with Carrot Top, and Norm Macdonald, who was the first guest and he was still on the couch, he just starts laying into her. He's like, hey, I've got a title for that movie, Career Suicide.
Box office poison.
Box office poison. And he's just merciless. And then, the killer thing is when she says, "Oh yeah, the movie's titled Chairman of the Board," and Conan literally says, "Oh well, hey, do something with that, Norm." And then a second later, Norm just says, "Oh, they should probably spell it B-O-R-E-D," and everyone loses it, including Courtney Thorne-Smith. It's just it's just terrific.
Yeah, it's a shame that he's gone, but like the things, the work he left behind will live on and in our hearts and in our spirits.
Yes.
Namaste.
But yeah, I mean, it's a shame because he was just like a unique comic voice, and it stinks that he's not here anymore. But yeah, we can treasure the stuff we have left with him. So.
Yeah, I mean, I almost can't wait to see what SNL is going to do when they go back on the air on October 2nd Like,
I watched, like, last night they reran the Dave Chappelle episode from this past November, and they did have a bumper card with just, Norm Macdonald. I was hoping that they would have rerun, like, when he came back to host. That would have been fun, but maybe next week or something. But,
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, because that's another thing. When he hosted, it was like a year after he got fired, and he addressed it immediately in his monologue.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, oh yeah, they fired me because they said I wasn't funny, but now apparently I'm funny enough to host the show.
Yeah. So either I learned how to get funny inside of the last year, or the show has gotten so unfunny. Yeah. I mean, again, he was just fearless when it came to comedy, and you got to admire that, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's our episode, guys. Thanks so much for listening, as always. Ken, thank you so much for being on the podcast again. Is there anything you'd like to plug, promote? Floor is yours.
Thanks for having me. Go on YouTube and just go down to Norm Macdonald Wormhole if you haven't yet.
Yeah.
And you can find me. I have a podcast called I Love Rock and Roll. If you're a music fan, we get some pretty cool guests.
Yeah, you just recently had John Fugelsang, or Richard Marx on there.
We had Richard Marx and Daisy Fuentes. We just had Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction and David Bryan from Bon Jovi. We've got some big guests coming up. We cover some wild stories with comics and musicians. So I Love Rock and Roll. You can find it anywhere.
That's great. Yeah. So I Love Rock and Roll. Check that out. I should mention I've also guest starred on a couple other podcasts recently. I was just recently on the Citizen Kane Minute that my friend Rob Kelly does, where he goes through the movie Citizen Kane 5 minutes at a time. I'm on, I think it's episode 17, and I talk about my love of that movie, and also an old Saturday Night Live sketch where they parody Citizen Kane, Citizen Kane 2, written by the great Michael O'Donoghue. And you can also hear me on the Gootscast. Our friend Ray Goots, he's covering all the Spider-Man movies up to No Way Home, and he and I have watched the first 2 TV movies from the 1970s with Spider-Man, and they are not good, you guys.
You don't say.
So check those out.
All right.
Darren, what about you? Got anything cool coming up?
Not right now, but as always, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Darren Credible. That's DARIN Credible.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Trumbull Comic, TRUMBULL, and the word comic. Ken, where can folks find you?
Ken Krantz Comic on Twitter and Instagram. Or if you want to follow the podcast, it's called the Twitter is Rock and Roll Pod with the "and" spelled out.
And we should say that your last name is Krantz.
Yes.
So, and you can also follow the show's page at SNL Nerds Show. And please, even if you've already followed it, go back and double check and make sure you followed it. When we had our little Twitter kerfluffle recently, we lost all our followers, so we're building that back up gradually. And so please check. Even if you followed before, go back and follow SNL Nerds Show on Twitter.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, Ken. We appreciate it. And thanks to super producer Frank Ablawi for sitting in as well.
Yeah, and so we'll get guys. Please tune in for the next episode. But until then,
Nerds out.
This has been a non-productive media presentation. Executive producer Frank Hablawi. This program and many others like it on the Non-Productive Network is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Please share it, but ask before trying to change it or sell it. For more information, visit non-productive.com.